So let us turn our attention first to the first feature, which is part of this great release produced by Val Lewton. And this work is described as being from the year 1943. And the name of the director is Jacques Tourneur. The name of the producer is Val Lewton, and we have the screenplay credited to Kurt Siodmak and Ardell Ray, based upon what is described as an original story by Inez Wallace, and starring, among others, in the great cast, people like Francis D. and Tom Conway, James Ellison, Darby Jones, Sir Lancelot, and others. This is the work which is, it's so great. This is such a great film. And it is this, which is I Walked with a Zombie. And I am holding up the booklet. This is a great booklet from the Criterion Collection. Staple booklet. Hurrah, hurrah. And what is more, you flip it and you have the part for the seventh victim. Isn't that cool? We'll talk about the booklet a little bit later, but I Walked with a Zombie, and you open the page here and we have the opening inside flap of this side of the front cover, with a great picture here, the character of Jessica, and I Walked with a Zombie. So Christine Gordon as Jessica. But yes, also James Ellison and Francis D. and Tom Conway. What a film this is. How to describe I Walked with a Zombie? Well, I suppose I could talk first about just my general memories of watching it for the first time. When I saw it as a kid, and this was around the time of discovering classic Hollywood horror films and suspense films from the 1930s and 40s onwards. As a kid, I was always into horror films and genre films, and I loved zombie films in the latter half of the 20th century, say Night of the Living Dead onwards. And when I first saw those horror films as a kid, I was hooked, and my life changed forever. But also during the period as I was getting gradually older, but still in my childhood, I was also beginning to be able to discover the great horror films, shown on TV in the video store, maybe for rental at the local library. So during that phase of my youth and discovery of these works, one title that came up, or a number of figures that ended up coming up in my own, say, fledgling journey of cinema journey, was the name of Val Lewton and also Jacques Tourneur. And so titles that came up that I read about were, we're talking about, if we're talking about those produced by Val Lewton, works like Cat People and I Walked with a Zombie came up a lot, which is a great title, by the way, and we'll talk about the titles in a bit. But these came up in those horror magazines and horror books that, as a kid, you get from the local bookstore, the library. You just read and just devour over and over, read and read and reread. And so those became a staple, and of my maybe sort of amateur cinema education. And so what that did, and then I would try to find these at my local video stores, and so it was through this process that I Walked with a Zombie as a kid, and it was I was expecting, in terms of the title, to get like a zombie film from the 1940s, and I got a zombie film from the 1940s, and I got some images that were, there are some real scary images in this film. Really scary images. Well, I'll get into it maybe a little bit later, but there's some shots of some faces that are frightening, and they happen kind of all of a sudden, so they give you a jolt. So there's really scary stuff. But what I was not expecting, maybe as a little boy watching this, and I've come to appreciate so much over the years as I've revisited this film, I Walked with a Zombie, is how much it is. I mean, it's equal parts horror film, it's equal parts gothic romance. It's equal parts kind of a mystery thriller chiller. It's a human drama. It's a drama about a family. It's also it has nuances in terms of broader socio-political implications, in terms of messages or maybe nuances or references to, say, colonialism, sort of the socio-political or socio-cultural impact of colonialism. We're talking here about the setting of San Sebastian and the Caribbean, although well, anyway, we'll talk a little bit about that later. But yes, so we have all these elements that are within this wonderful stirring pot, this melting pot that, in the hands of Tourneur and Val Lewton, ends up being this quite complex film that is about death and about love and about zombies, but the actual concept of the zombie and life and death and religion and culture kind of infused in a way that was, to my young eyes and ears and heart, much to my great surprise and delight. I mean, there are many things that I had no idea about and quite stunned by and quite shocked by. So it really took my as I say, my youthful sensibilities about movies, and it really upended them in I think, a real fantastic way. And as I say, I've been loving many horror films, many zombie films, and I still do. I always will. And one of the key works in that mode of discovery and self-discovery, I would say, is when I first watched I Walked with a Zombie, in my life. And so it's now that I revisit the film I Walked with a Zombie, I'm reminded of that, and also I'm just always taken by how it's like a hall of mirrors in a way. I'm going down one path, thinking I'm gonna end up in one location, and then I go in these myriad possible routes when I watch I Walked with a Zombie. It's so complex and rich and dense. It's lovely, but it's also, I think, very accessible. I mean, the film makes it quite easy to follow. I mean, there are so many characters, yes, but I think the situations are succinctly presented, and the emotions and the character motivations, I think, are very understandable, and they come down to sort of fundamental movements of a kind of emotional sweep at the heart of this, which I think is so great, and it so organically builds upon that. With respect to these various elements that I alluded to in terms of being mixed in this proverbial cinematic melting pot. So I Walked with a Zombie is such a rich package, and it's a lovely example of just how great Val Lewton's produced films are, and Jacques Tourneur and his filmography. I mean, I should just round it up. I mean, after I was beginning to read more and more about Val Lewton, who is Val Lewton? Where can I get more of the films? And I began to try to figure out in my head, what is a director, what is a producer? So that type of dialogue was happening. It was really great to be able to do this at the age that I was able to. I felt so lucky in that way. And so Val Lewton films or produced films really helped with that in that discussion. And so, yes, the role of the producer also began to sort of coagulate in my head, and that was, I think, really important step again in my young age, in my sort of fledgling cinema journey period, which I suppose is still fledgling. I still have so much to learn watching these films, so yes, so that was my sort of general impression, and just carried through with me, or just grew more and more and more as I was able to watch these. I Walked with a Zombie, and indeed other works. Jacques Tourneur, I was able to catch up, for instance, with a great. It's not associated with the set or the Val Lewton produced films per se, but in terms of the director, Jacques Tourneur, there was a real classic film. So many, but one that I was reading so much about, and I ended up being able to watch it. It's called Night of the Demon. Oh my goodness, Night of the Demon. But anyway, Jacques Tourneur's name became very important, and then Val Lewton, and be able to catch up with these other films associated with Val Lewton, like I don't know, Cat People, and then The Seventh Victim and others, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But that is my very maybe bloated, I apologize for it, but and a very haphazard way of expressing how much I was drawn to this film and how surprising it was to me watching it, and still is. I think that's part of the fun and joy of this film, I Walked with a Zombie. So, now, what is the plot or story structure of I Walked with a Zombie? I think if we were, I want to try to be very, I want to try to tiptoe around this as much as possible, because I don't want to, I don't want to spoil this for anyone who hasn't seen this great film, I Walked with a Zombie. There are so many surprises to this that I think it's so valuable to watch this film upon first watch with knowing as little as possible. So I'll try my best to avoid the spoilers of this great film, I Walked with a Zombie. But if we were to try to describe it, how would we begin? Well, I suppose we would begin with our main character, or one of our main characters. That's the Frances D character, who's Betsy, who's a nurse, and she is essentially asked to take on a position in sort of this nurse medical role, in terms of taking care of the health and well-being of a particular patient, and this job is something she accepts because it will take Betsy, who is one of our heroes in the film, to an island in the Caribbean called San Sebastian. And here she will meet a number of people, a number of players that will be incredibly important in the proceedings of I Walked with a Zombie. So she will meet people like Paul Holland, who is the owner of the plantation where her patient will be residing and living. Her patient, by the way, is Jessica, who is Paul's wife. So we will find out what is ailing Jessica, because when we meet her, she is very visibly quite, there seems to be something that there seems to be something that is maybe she is suffering from something, or there seem to be symptoms of some kind of illness or some kind of condition, physical condition, or maybe a psychological condition, or maybe both, or some sort of emotional trauma, or some other kind of, say, illness or sickness. And so this is part of the, say, mystery, or the thrust of the plot of the film. But we also meet Wesley. This is Rand, who is related to Paul, sort of brothers or half brothers relationship. But they also have a working relationship in terms of, again, the plantation owner, and also someone who works on the plantation as well as having certain, say, misgivings, shall we say, or there's a little bit of tension or antagonism in the air between among the members of this household and this family and this plantation setup, again, in the Caribbean. Now, that's just the beginning, because when Betsy, our nurse character, one of the heroes of this film, begins to try to understand what is ailing Jessica, and when she begins to discover that there are things that are perhaps having to do with the island and the situation, Paul's position, Wesley's position, Jessica's position. Also, there is on the island the culture and community that Betsy is beginning to know and beginning to grow fond of. She is also beginning to grow fond of Paul, and maybe there might be the makings of some kind of gothic romance-based love triangle, or love relationship of sorts, and that also is the source of some tension. Also, we also have some exploration of the sort of a history and culture of this community, which is associated with not just a plantation, but broader themes, historical themes of, say, colonialism, and also the the population and the general public, and also instances of or references to, for example, slavery, and also we have the exploration of Vodou, and how Vodou may or may not be involved or associated or related with not just the mysterious goings on in the family household of Holland and Rand, and Mrs. Rand as well, their mother, and Betsy and Jessica for that matter, but also other members of the community that we see in terms of one of the great characters that are part of this is a character called Carrefour, who is portrayed by Darby Jones, as well as a further introduction and exposure to, and perhaps falling in love with the place and the people and the times and the culture and the music. And here's where you have the appearance of people like Sir Lancelot to really give that context much texture and vividness with everything that's associated with that appearance. And you associate with that too themes of love and passion, and also life and death and the past. Things emerge about the past, secrets of the past that emerge that really have the potential of shaking the very foundation of the members of this community and the members of this household that we have come to meet. And for people like Betsy, who is not only seeking to find some kind of truth, not only seeking to protect Jessica, but also seeking perhaps to protect the people that she is growing really attached to, and perhaps even close to loving. People like Jessica, people like Paul, perhaps. Thus creating a really quite volatile mix of Gothic romance, human drama, a sort of fascinating almost look into the roles of Vodou in society and culture and the arts, and from a cultural expressive point of view, also from a type of religious point of view, and also from a performative point of view, and also from the point of view of perceptions and philosophies about life and death. And this is where we have the possible connections with the zombie. But what is the concept of the zombie? What is the meaning of the zombie in the context of Vodou, in the context of how Vodou is related to the specific goings on of the plot of I Walked with a Zombie? It is very, I think, there are some connections that are very cleanly and quite brilliantly established that themselves have or carrying with it sense of enigma and mystery. And when we further realize that the possibilities of the answers to these enigmas and mysteries lie in the past and what happened in the past with these key figures that we have come to know as part of this Paul, Rand and Holland and Mrs. Rand and others. And then when we also come to understand too that perhaps their story is but a representation on a broader scale of kind of social, economic, and cultural impact of clashing societies that is reflective of the historical flow of Saint Sebastian, or as a stand-in for the Caribbean and Haiti, etc. And then when we understand that this is all intertwined in a kind of mix of a cinematic potion of horror and also romance, what we come away with is this real a wonderful swell of a mix of emotions, and that's one of the great strengths about this. I mean, it's a across the board. It feels like it's many films at once, and each film is its own thing, but it's also organically connected. I mean, I love that. I really love that, and what that means is we are going towards, or we feel like we are sympathizing with one character, And we think that maybe things are quote unquote black and white. Maybe this is a good character, this is a bad character, something like that. But it's not so simple in the world of Val Lewton and Jacques Tourneur and I Walked with a Zombie, because when we get to know these characters more and more, we realize that their positions are very complex. So it's not a simple matter of heroes and villains in this world. Everyone has their own story. Everyone has their own motivations. Everything has a place. And when we combine all of those together, and when we understand that there are those dramatic clashes between these, among these various, say, different positionings, it is a very complex battlefield indeed. And it's so cool. It's so wonderful. And you throw into the mix this notion of, say, death and love. And that is a very powerful concoction. That is itself, I think, bundled together so ingeniously in the film's or the plot's association with Vaudou, and the setting of Saint Sebastian, and images of people like Carrefour and others. This is the stuff of I walked with a zombie. But what does that mean? I walked with a zombie. The answers that, or the potential answers that this film provides, I think, create a sense of tension and drama and suspense and romance. And it really goes down so many paths that make for, I think, such complex consideration. I don't want to go into too many specifics, but let me say that every time I watch this film, you know, films have this wonderful way to have this beginning, middle, and end. But what I love about a film like I Walked with a Zombie, I watch it. It goes from A to B, and then when it hits B, I'm thinking, my goodness, what's going on? I want to see what happens at C, and it goes to C. But then C leads to more questions like, wow, what's going on? I want to see more of it. So it goes to D, and then E, F, G, and then there's just only so much that you can pack into the running time of the film. But what's so great about it is you know that it's ongoing even after the film ends, because it has to, because of the finite nature of running times. It has to end at some point. But what's so lovely is that it feels like it's its own thing, its own organic world, even beyond the frames of the film. And you feel that way because things are complex because they need to be complex. Things are richly interwoven because they need to be. Not everything is black and white in this complex morass of morals and considerations, and life and death, and love and loss considerations, and horror and spectacle, and also society and culture, and love and betrayal, and everything in between. Everything is complex and rich, and my goodness, we are all the better for it when it's combined in this great package of a film. So this is my take on I Walked with a Zombie.